Before we jump into the episode, do you ever get so wrapped up in your business you forget it's time to get someone special a gift? Not the same boring flowers or cookie cutter bauble. No, you want something unique, one of a kind. Guys, I got you. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code if you're watching on TV and go to the Glass Arts Collective. They have dozens of handmade, one-of-a-kind items in lots of categories. You'll find animals, jewelry, holiday gifts, and lots more. All a one-of-one and ready to ship anywhere in the US. Head over there to find that special gift for your special someone, and thank you, Glass Arts Collective, for sponsoring GYET. This is Get Your Entrepreneurship Together, where you'll find stories, tips, and value from successful entrepreneurs who are out there crushing it. Here's a short preview of this week's episode.
I'm giving you the best recipe. I've been doing this for 55 years. You haven't been doing this for 55 minutes, maybe. Why aren't you paying attention?
You could have, I know you're not a big boat guy, but you could have bought a boat to sail to the south of France, right? But you didn't. You went back in. Why?
And the most important thing about success in anything, in sports, in business, in a relationship is...
And welcome back to the show, everyone. My name is Brian Elam. I will be your host here on Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. And today, oh boy, you are tuning in for a great episode. I have Jackson Hewitt here. Now, you might think that name sounds familiar. Hewitt, where have I heard that before? By chance, have you ever heard of Jackson Hewitt? Yeah, that Hewitt. This guy has been a serial entrepreneur for a long time, built businesses, sold them for billions, and he is here today to talk to us about those stories, those values and tips he's learned along the way and pass them on to you. So this is going to be one you are going to want to share. You're going to want to save it, all of those things. So John, I just can't thank you enough for coming on. It's a true privilege to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So I like to do this with every one of my guests, typically, that we lay the foundation for who you are, where you came from. That way we can understand you as a person, and then we can build on your expertise from there. So starting off, where were you raised, and was entrepreneurship in your family at all?
I was raised in upstate New York, and it was only in my family in the sense that my dad was always wanted to be an entrepreneur. He grew up in the Depression. He went to the Army. He went to Michigan State, paid for by the government. And the problem is he had 3 children before he got out of Michigan State, 5 children pretty quickly. And we were poor, and he never could afford it until I was in college. But my father was the guy, the visionary that dragged me into being an entrepreneur.
Okay, so he had that desire in him that he didn't want to work for somebody else forever, and he just didn't know exactly how he was going to do it.
Exactly. And you know, most of your audience isn't nearly as old as me, but let me take you back to a period. Not only were there not malls, there weren't even shopping centers. So about 1956, I remember him sketching a drawing when the first shopping center opened within a couple miles of my house. He was sketching a drawing for a steam brush vehicle that would clean the parking lot of the shopping center.
Okay, and obviously those came to fruition.
Exactly.
Wow. So is that the company that he started? Is building and manufacturing those?
Actually, that never got legs. What happened is by the time I was in college, and I was the oldest of 5, by the time I was in college, he began to accumulate some wealth. He was CFO of he was a controller of a fairly big company, and he had some money, and he called H&R Block, and H&R Block was expanding very very dramatically back in 1969. And he said, I'd like to buy a franchise in our suburb of Buffalo. And they said, well, as a matter of fact, we're going to open a company store there. Why don't you have your son take our course and see if he could work for me? So his first effort was in trying to buy a block franchise. 12 years later, I loved it so much. 12 years later, I was running a 250 H&R Block offices, loving life. But now he was the CFO of a public company. He had decided he liked the little Apple that he bought by mail better than the mainframe that was running his public company. And back in the 70s, there weren't even a million desktops in the country.
Oh yeah.
He was visionary, and he decided that we should computerize tax. So in 1981, our first entrepreneurial venture was together, and I was dragged in by him, and we built the first tax software for an Apple computer.
Okay. Wow. So your dad just bootstrapped that, learned what coding was, and just put it together because obviously he knew the numbers side of the tax business, right?
Actually, I did all the work.
Oh,
So my dad was he was an accountant. I was a tax, and most people don't differentiate between tax people and accounting people. He was never a tax guy. He was always an accountant. He was
mhm.
always a CFO. So he knew enough to inspire me, guide me, and have me do the programming and develop the tax software. Back when he was in college, from 49 to or 48 to 51, there was no computer courses back then. So I had taken a couple courses, and I did all the work. He was the visionary and the person that saw a future that almost no one did. And it was such a different world then that H&R Block had tried using a computer software powered by a mainframe, and they said in their annual report they were a Fortune 500 company. In 1983, they said, people ask us why we don't computerize, and we say, doesn't save us any money, customers don't care, we're never going to computerize. So here's my dad saying, we got to get this computerized. And H&R Block, the billion-dollar company, is saying, nah, we're never going to computerize.
So you had a choice to make. You're either going to stay there and stay stagnant or go and do something on your own and follow your vision.
Exactly. And it turned out pretty well, having founded two companies worth over $1.5 billion public companies.
Yeah, I would say that turned out very well. Yes. And that was Liberty Tax, correct?
The second one was Liberty Tax, right?
Okay.
After after I sold Jackson Hewitt, then I started Liberty Tax, correct?
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow. So going back just a little bit into the H&R Block days, what were you doing there? Were you actually like doing people's taxes, or you say you oversaw quite a few locations, or where is it more of the executive role, so to speak?
Yeah, I moved up through the ranks. I started part-time evenings and weekends while I was in college, and then I was promoted to be a assistant manager of about 20 locations. And then I became a manager of 20 locations for about 5 years. And then finally, my last job there was I was a regional director managing 18 district managers and 250 locations.
Wow. And that's just one of the best ways to do it is you come up in the ranks, you see the business from all angles, and you can help them grow, which obviously would stint right into your ability to get into franchises and help them grow as well.
Exactly, and out of the out of my 250 offices, I had 50 franchisees. So I learned very early in my career, and even when I had 5 offices, I had 6 franchisees. So managing franchisees is a different animal than managing employees, because
Mm,
franchisees are independent owners, and so you can't treat them like employees. They're more like partners and customers, combination of partners and customers than being an employee.
right. And I'm glad you made that distinction because I was going to ask you what is, I mean, how do you interact with those people to make sure that you get the point across, that the systems are staying in place, and that they're able to still remain some amount of autonomy, right? Because after all, they're entrepreneurs too.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to think about. Number one is I view franchisees kind of like children, and the most important thing in a franchise system is following that system. And Brian, I brought in 5,200 franchisees. Not one has ever followed the system 100%, nor have my children followed my system 100%. So I view them like franchisees. But what you have to, what I, the thing that set me apart and helped me be incredibly is so blessed and so successful is I always try to do what's best for every person. And sometimes what best is tough love. And if someone's not following the system and not paying attention, you owe it to them to tell them. So, during the tax season, let's say you start out and it's your first year, along about the first week or two of the season, we know whether you're listening or not. And then we'll send you an email saying you're not listening. And then if that doesn't work, we call you. And if that doesn't work, we come and see you. We're going to be obnoxious in making sure that you understand what the system is and that you're not following it. And because I created 1,000 millionaires and had 1,000 people fail. And the only difference didn't matter how smart you were, educated, experienced. The only difference was I'm giving you the best recipe. I've been doing this for 55 years. You haven't been doing this for 55 minutes, maybe. Why aren't you paying attention?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You sometimes you need that wake up call, that slap in the face, as some people say. It's like, hey, this is reality. This is what's going on, and you did this thing because you believed in my experience. So let's tap into it and let's follow it. Going down that road, having all that experience, those interactions, um, what would you say the best lesson from the first part of your career, running the H&R Block locations, the Liberty Tax, the Jackson Hewitt? Like, what is one of the greatest lessons you learned from that part of your life?
We used to believe long ago, and they used to say that customers number one, customers number one, customers number one. But then along came Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines, and he wrote a book called Nuts. And he said, "No, he said, if you want your customers to be treated as number one, you have to treat your employees as number one." So what I learned and my mantra, and it's so simple because Brian, most franchisors fail. 80% of them fail. And we as Americans only think of the big ones. The H&R Blocks, the Jackson Hewitts, the Liberty Tax, the McDonald's, the Subways. We think of the big ones. But 80% of them go out of business. And it's so simple because it comes down to happy, successful employees and happy, successful franchisees.
And how do you make sure that your employees are happy and successful? That way they can transfer that happiness to the customer.
One of the, I did a webinar recently, and I spent an hour talking about what are the top 10 things to grow exponentially, and one of them is listen to your employees. And so many people I've learned, and I didn't learn this until midlife, but so many people when you're talking to them, or I'm sorry, when you're listening to them, you're getting ready to say something instead of listening carefully. So not only do I mean listen to my employees, but really listen to my employees and make changes. If you hear what they say and you never change your system, then that's not really listening. Because if you and I, Brian, have a difference of opinion, you're a smart guy. I believe the answer isn't, neither one of us is 100% right. The answer is somewhere in between. And so there's always, I mean, even if I'm 5% right or 95% right. There's an answer is somewhere between what you and I think. I'm never going to be 100% right, and you're never going to be 100% right. So you really have to listen, and part of listening is you have to make meaningful changes according to what you're hearing.
Yep, that's right. You have to get the ego out of the way in order to be able to do those things, right?
Exactly. I'm not the only guy with ideas. If I limited to myself, I wouldn't be 1% as successful as I am.
Right. Right. And part of those, the road to being successful, obviously you're going to come up against obstacles, roadblocks, what have you. And as someone who has had such success and experience in business, I'm just curious, what do you do, or what is your process to think through these obstacles that come up? Are they problems? Those obstacles. Are they problems? Are they indicators, or are they opportunities?
Problems are opportunities, and no one's allowed to scare. I've never seen a person on this planet that didn't face adversity, and also people that that are the most successful have made the most mistakes. So I've made a lot of mistakes that caused a lot of my own issues, and I've faced obstacles. But one difference and the most important thing about success in anything, in sports, in business, in a relationship, is you have to persevere. That's the number one thing, and you have to overcome obstacles. An obstacle is an opportunity. For example, what in the tax business, and this is probably true in virtually every industry. So I shouldn't say in the tax business, but in it's difficult retaining employees because we they only work for 3 months and they only make $10 or $15,000 and on average, and then you want them to take 9 months off without sick pay, holiday pay, vacation pay, and come back and do it all over again. That I mean, where do you find people like that? So hiring isn't that difficult because you can train them, and with a computer you can they can do a great job for a customer. What the problem is getting them to come back the next year. Well, that while that presents a huge difficulty, it's an opportunity in that it's a barrier to entry. So when there's difficult times and difficult things, you develop systems and strategies to solve the problem, and you have a competitive advantage on those people that haven't done that just suffer from lack of employees. So in my industries, or in that industry for sure, most of my employees lack staffing, but we have solutions to solve that problem, and therefore it's a barrier to entry for others, but for us, it's a opportunity to excel and be a differentiator compared to our competitors. So yes, opportunity, not problem.
And when you're creating those opportunities and you're seeing the people that are applying and maybe wanting to come back, like how are you creating that? Is it in the hiring process that you help them understand the vision of the company and so they're totally bought in? How does that process work?
Well, I'm not going to tell you all my secrets, right?
Oh, come
Because
on
because
now.
but that's a I'm going to tell you the most important one though, and you've already hit on it. But I'm going to tell you the most important one. I'm not going to tell you all my secrets because remember, it's a competitive advantage.
Sure.
So this could be distributed. You could go sell it to the whole market and right make a fortune. Right? No, I'm just kidding. But the most important thing is you hit the nail on the head. What we do is we run a tax class and we teach people to do taxes. And out of that class, we hire the best students. Now, you might think, who's the best student? Someone that's very personable, someone that scores high in the test, someone that's flexible, but the number one thing you're looking for is someone likely to return,
Mm,
return year after year, because whenever you lose a taxpayer, you lose customers
right.
because customers like to go back to the same tax preparer, and they always have, and so you look for someone likely to return. So in today's society, that has changed over my 55-year career. When I in again, you're not old enough to remember, but back in the 70s, most of our preparers were housewives. because only a third, less than a third of the women in the United States work.
Mm,
They stayed home with kids. And so as soon as the kids got old enough to go to school, they're in the kindergarten or older, they would begin coming looking for something to do to make extra money. So back in the 70s, most of my preparers were women who were housewives who didn't have another job most of the rest of the year. Well, it changed over the years, and now with the all the people retiring, 10,000 people a day are turning 65 for the last 7 or 8 years, and the next 6 or 7 years. It's early, and there's more women working than men, and so now it's early retirees. So if you're choosing between someone that has a higher grade and a little bit more personable, or someone with a little lower grade and less personal, and early retiree versus between jobs. Let's pretend you're an engineer and you're between jobs. Well, we know, and you're making 80,000 a year. We know you're going to go back and be an engineer, right? And
right.
you might give us a week, a month, a tax season, but you're going to leave us. So we're gonna skew looking for the likelihood of returning year after year.
Mm, very interesting perspective. I like that. Yeah, and it makes total sense too. Why would you keep that or think that you were going to keep that engineer versus somebody that is looking for a part-time thing or the next phase of their life?
Especially if you've done it hundreds of thousands of times, like I have.
Right.
I've had hundreds of thousands of employees, and I have built over 10,000 offices uh, with over 5,000 franchises with over 150,000 employees. So I've done this for a long time.
Right. Right. And so talking about the types of people, I wanted to ask you, who is the type of person that is best as a franchise owner? We already touched on one of their qualities, being able to stay the course, if you will. But is there anything else that makes up a good franchisee?
To be, yeah, to make sure that we don't leave that focus. Winning and losing, pass, fail, success, failure, comes down to one thing, and that is whether you follow the proven system, whether you follow the recipe. Now, what you're talking about, okay, now we do follow the recipe. What else matters?
Right.
Right. Because if you don't follow the recipe, it doesn't matter if you're smart or driven or hardworking or ambitious or have a great attitude, and nothing else matters. So the first basic, don't forget that. That's 90% of it. 90% of it is just you gotta listen. The other 10% is you have a great attitude. Tom Watson Sr., the founder of IBM, said, "Give me 100 people with great attitude or 100 great engineers. Take the people with great attitude. You can teach engineering, you can't teach attitude." And Brian, one of the biggest mistakes I made in my career is trying to change people's attitudes. And I'm 0 for 100. Never. I mean, I can change it for an hour, a week, a month, but they pop right back in that bad attitude. So you hire for attitude. That's critical. And part of attitude, of course, is you have to have a good work ethic. You have to be driven. There's no one when you're self-employed. There's no one there telling you what to do. You have to, if it's the most important 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to you, Mr. Franchise.
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And so getting into the mindset of a franchisee, franchisor, and your experience, why, after selling your first two companies, why go back in? What was left to do? What was left to build? I'm just curious because obviously at that point you could have retired. You could have. I know you're not a big boat guy, but you could have bought a boat and sailed the south of France, right? But you didn't. You went back in. Why?
Most people just want to retire. And of all the franchisees I've brought in and all almost everyone gets complacent. Once they get the the house they want, the car they want, the education for the children they want. Once they get comfortable, they stop being driven. And so that's typical human nature. But and when I was a kid, when I was cocky, when I was a teenager, believe it or not, and I I knew I was going to get rich. I just didn't know how.
Mm.
And somehow I knew I was going to get wealthy, and I thought, oh, I'll make a few $1,000,000 and retire. But along the way, I learned the journey is the joy. The treasure at the end of the rainbow is anticlimactic. I sold two companies for $1 billion, or they had $1 billion value, and those two checks were 15 years and then 20 years later. That's anticlimactic. You got to enjoy the journey. And God didn't put me on this planet and give me all these blessings to not give back. I have to give back. And I cannot understand people that retire, and God bless them. I'm not, wouldn't criticize anyone for that, but I'm so healthy, and I'm at the peak of my wisdom. And to go sit on a beach and not help people, what a waste that would be. Every day I'm helping people improve their lives. And that's our mission statement. And that's my personal mission statement. And our business mission statement is four words: having fun, improving lives. And on Monday morning, if you're going to work, you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place. It's not thank God it's Friday, it's thank God it's Monday. And there's nothing more rewarding than improving other people's lives.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. That's been my entirety of my career, is somehow, some way connected to the service industry and serving, helping people. So I completely am on board with that. And it goes into the idea of, if you're not meant to do something, what are you meant to do, and what are those clues? And I think you laid out a really big one right there. If you're going through your life and thinking TGIF, well, you're probably not in the right place where you're meant to be and meant to thrive. And to that point, I wanted to ask you, why, again, why franchises versus starting your own thing and building it from the ground up?
Well, let me give you an example of the lesson I learned at Jackson Hewitt. When we started Jackson Hewitt, I learned this. I made a huge mistake. We bought 6 offices from Mel Jackson's widow. We merged the two companies, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt. So we had 6 offices. Now each in our block had 9,000. And I told my investors, we're going to be bigger than H&R Block. My goal is to have 9,001 offices, to open 8,995 offices. Well, 2.5 years later, we had 22 offices. So we had gone from 6 to 22. Now, almost everyone would be happy with that growth, right? Growing from 6 to 22 in just 2.5 years. But I realized if I'm going to get to 9,001, I'll be 1,000 years old by the time I get there. So I said, and what am I doing different than Block did? Well, Block learned their lesson earlier than me. It took me 2 tax seasons to learn the lesson. Block learned it after the second tax season too. They started out with 1 store. The second year, they opened 3 stores in New York City, and they found it to be difficult to manage them, so they sold them as franchises. So they started, and after my second year, I started franchising too. I should have done it from day one. So we went from 22 to 49 to 200 to 400. We started growing exponentially. So, and the beauty of franchising, Brian, is that people pay you. They pay you a to acquire a franchise, and then they pay you a recurring revenue to work for you. So I get great people like yourself who are very capable. I don't have to pay them; they're paying me, and they're building my system and building my name and building my empire. And it's the greatest. It's in a way, it's the greatest scam ever. But it's not a scam because the good people become millionaires, and the good people prosper way more than if they're employees. Right? Building a business in this country is the way to build wealth. And so I help people build wealth They helped me build my company. And so it's a great, when it's done well, when you find a franchisor that cares about happy, successful franchisors, it's the best system on the planet.
Mm. So is it kind of like a tiered system where, let's say that you're at the top, right? It's your organization, your franchisor, and then you bring somebody in who wants to open a location. Let's just say it's like a chain restaurant, whatever, doesn't really matter. They
Sure.
want to open a chain restaurant. They're in there, they're running it for a while. Do they have the opportunity to essentially become or go from a franchisee to a franchisor, and so they can have the multiple locations underneath them building their leg of the business? Is that possible?
Well, you said I could give you a quiz. I could give you quizzes earlier before we started. So I'm going to give you my first quiz.
Okay, here we go.
Obviously know who Sam Walton is,
I do.
right? And who is he?
Well, he's the founder creator of Walmart.
Right. Now, before Sam Walton created Walmart, he was the largest franchisee of another chain.
you're
And
you're right. I
what
forgot
was the name of that chain?
the name. Oh my goodness.
You almost have to be much older than you. You probably have to be much older than you to remember that.
Is
But
it Sears and Roebuck?
no,
Nope.
it was even larger than Sears and Roebuck. They
Oh,
had thousands of locations. Sears only got to about 800, but it was a franchise. And Sears was never um, in their big cities a franchise. They would franchise one-offs in little teeny towns of 15,000. But this was a national chain and it was a retail chain. So I'll give you that clue. But it's want to guess? Any other guess? It was an American patriot. One of the founding fathers.
oh my goodness.
This was a diplomat that went to France and negotiated with the French before the Revolutionary War. He's on a bill.
I'm just I'm
Ben
struggling here.
Franklin.
Was it Ben
Ben
Franklin?
Franklin.
Okay.
The name of the retail chain was Ben Franklin, and he was their largest franchise. And he went to them and said, "I have a different idea." And they said, "Well, we don't want to do that idea." So he sold all of his Ben Franklins and opened the first Walmart. And I've been to that. There's a museum in downtown Bentonville, Arkansas, and it's right. There's a little town square still there, and it's called Walton 5 and 10 cent store. And that was the first Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas. But he had been a franchisee. So to answer your question, some very large, successful organizations have started by being the franchise of another franchisor. Dave that started Wendy's, I believe he was a large, I'm not positive, but either Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's. I think he was a large franchisee and and he founded Wendy's.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, the founder of Papa John's used to be a franchisee for Pizza Hut. Is that right?
I'm not positive. I would not be surprised at all.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that correctly.
I actually, before my dad and I started built the software, and I don't talk about this much, but he and I owned a couple franchises at H&R Block while I was an employee. They weren't in my area, but we owned a couple franchises for H&R Block. So I was the franchisee of H&R Block, and I built two chains of 10,000 locations, and I had started at H&R Block. So there's a lot of successful people have been franchisees before they became franchisors.
Yep. And I can see that as being a natural progression. Obviously, I just wanted to tap into your experience and knowledge and see if that was, hey, is this actually a thing? Does this happen? And just case in point after point. There you go. And you mentioned earlier, the mission for your business and your own personal mission, to create happiness and help people achieve and thrive and all of those wonderful things. What is your vision for your life? What's at the well, I don't want to say the end, but because the journey's the magic, right? So what is the purpose and the vision for your journey, John?
It's just continual improvement, continue improving lives, helping people, and they got to kill me to stop me. I just love what I do, and so again, I feel bad for someone that's, thank God it's Friday, and what does that mean? They only have 2 or 3 happy days a week,
Mm.
and the rest of the week is sour. I mean, every day for me is an adventure and a joy. I mean, it's filled with obstacles and problems and issues, but overcoming adversity is so much is so much fun. You can't be the best unless you're going to overcome the adversity. So and keep you winners get knocked down just as much as losers, except they always get up. They never stay down. And yeah, so there's no stopping me. I'm going to die in the job.
Well, that's great. It's a wonderful place to be in, truly enjoying your life and enjoying the journey. And to that end, you made a distinction of obstacles and challenges and things like this. They always come up, and the winners are the ones that always get back up. And I'm not sure how much you agree with this or pay attention to the economy stuff. I would imagine you to do in your industry, but a lot of people are saying we are primed for a crash, a correction, however you want to verbalize it. And that always makes people a little skittish, scared, standoffish. And do you agree that the best time to start a business and be in business is when there's a downturn in the economy? And if so, how do we maintain our fortitude to keep moving forward instead of retreating back and like, I'm going to wait and see?
You're exactly right. And in the toughest times, that's the easiest time to gain market share. When there's a high tide that all boats rise, it's when there's a low tide where all the boats are starting to sink that the underperformers go under. So the highest performers grab market share extensively during recession. At Liberty Tax in 2008 and 2009, the worst recession of my lifetime, the at Liberty Tax, we opened over 600 new stores. I mean, Starbucks closed 650 stores because you don't have to buy a cup of coffee, a fancy cup of coffee during recession, but you do have to do your taxes. So yeah, the weak go out of business, and there's just so much opportunity. So, but it starts with positive attitude. You have to realize that everything is temporary. And I thought you were going to ask me when their next recession is, because I'm certainly not an expert at predicting that, but I am an expert at knowing there is going to be another recession, and there are going to be good times and bad times. There always have been. In my 55-year career, I've gone through 6 recessions. So there's going to be a recession, and I'm going to benefit at others, and others are going to go out of business. Record numbers of businesses go out of business during recession. And boy, is that an opportunity. Okay, you can have my customer list. You can have my location. You can have my good staff. Wow, I grabbed staff and customer lists and locations during when times are tough. You have to prepare and not overextend and be ready for them and tighten your belt. When recession comes, you have to tighten your belt and be more careful and look for all the opportunities that present themselves.
And that's exactly where I wanted to go next. And you kind of touched on it, but how do people stay open to those possibilities and opportunities when those times hit? Like, how do you have any ways of thinking or mindset work that you've done over the years to help you stay open when those times hit and see those opportunities?
Starts with your employees. Most of your variable labor is your employees, and you're paying them well and treating them well. I've had a couple. We went through 2 different very tough years. One was caused externally and one was caused by my mistake. And we almost went bankrupt. And I had to go to the employees and say, one time I said, "You're for the next for the from this May until the next tax season, I'm going to cut your pay in half." And I took zero pay. I was prepared to take zero pay to do what it took to tough it out during that. And I borrowed money on my credit cards and made it through. You have to. We knew that it's going to end. There's going to be goodness coming. You just have to seek the relationship with your employees, your vendors, your banks, your everyone. You have to have a plan, and you have to follow that plan, and you have to sometimes tighten your belt. And when you go to great people who believe in you, part of achieving greatness is getting everyone to buy in. And that's one of my top 10 most important things on exponential growth is getting everyone to buy in. So that means my bankers bought in, my investors, my franchisees, my customers, my employees, go to everyone and say, okay, we have to tighten our belt. This isn't going to be forever. It's going to be 9 months or 18 months, but there's going to be a tight period where we're going to have to not provide everything that we have been providing, right? I mean, we're going to cut back during this time until the things change. And so it starts with the preparation of mindset to get everyone to buy into your dream. And then it's a lot easier to go through the tough time.
So you keep everyone on board, you let them know what's coming, but that they are still going to be ultimately supported. Like you said, you're not going to lessen their pay, cut their hours, things like this. But there are other things that will have to, unfortunately be sacrificed for a little bit. And I think a lot of that comes out of the type of, the business model. Like you were saying earlier with Starbucks, maybe you can't afford a $6 cup of coffee every day when the recession hits, but you still have to do your taxes. So if you're in a business that is a necessity versus a luxury, let's say, then you can kind of calm down a little bit maybe about this whole fear because you're in an industry that's needed, that is, it's what they call it, recession proof.
Yeah, and I don't, that they use that phrase mostly recession proof. I think of it more as recession resistant
Mm,
because there's almost nothing that's recession proof, right? But there are lots of things that are recession resistant.
that's true. And I think we saw that with the banks that went under, all those years ago. You would never think these banks with multiple locations around the nation and financial stability would ever go under. But yeah, you're right. There's no such thing as recession proof. Well, this has been, and I knew it. I knew it, guys. It's been an incredible conversation so far, and obviously we want to keep going. We want to dive in more to the franchise world. And I was wondering, what is one of the most exciting moments in your business journey now that you've, after the Jackson Hewitt days, the H&R days, what was one of the most exciting things in your memory from the next phase of your business life?
There's been so many that Entrepreneur magazine every year in January ranks the top 500 best out of 4,000. There's been about over 3 to 4,000 for the last franchisors for 30 years and over 30 years. And they have the top 500 ranked every January. Well, when I was at Jackson Hewitt, we got a ranking up to third in the country. It was Subway, McDonald's, and then Jackson Hewitt. So that was exciting. 10 years later, 12 years later, we were at Liberty Tax. We were ranked number two. So it was McDonald's, us, and Subway. So McDonald's and Subway have been back in the 90s and early 21st century were dominating, 80s, 90s were dominating that list. But out of 4,000 franchisors, we were ranked second one year and third another year. At Liberty Tax, we were for 10 straight years, we were named as, we were one of the top out of the 4,000 franchisors in the country, we were one of the top 10 fastest growing 10 straight years.
Oh,
And
wow.
we, as a result, Liberty Tax was top 10 out of 10,000, over 10,000 franchises that have been formed in the United States. We're in the top 10 ever. And in 2005, I won Entrepreneur of the Year award. So there were 4,000 franchisees, and at their convention every year, they give one Entrepreneur of the Year award. So I was like the 12th Entrepreneur of the Year out of 4,000 franchisors. So there's a lot of things like that. Our Zoom and Grooming franchise just this week became the largest mobile grooming franchise in the country,
Oh,
and
wow.
and and we're in the top. It's only 37 months old, and out of 4,000 franchisors, we're already in the top 25 fastest growing. So I mean, there's just so many great memories, but it's I mean, those are just again that's just anticlimactic. Every day is a journey in changing people's lives, and there is joy in every day. And I've changed. I brought in 5,200 franchisees. I've improved tens of thousands of lives. So that's that. If the thing I want to be, and people ask me that, what do you want to be known for? And I want to be known for changing tens of thousands of lives. Because Brian, when I change someone's life, well, let's say I help you and change you, and you're achieving your dreams and you're happy, well, and you're making good money. Well, then that passes to your children, to your spouse, and to their children, and you pay it forward. So if I help 10,000 people, they helped 100,000 more. So it's just so there's just so many exciting moments. Every day is an adventure. Every day is exciting. Every day is aggravating. I mean, I go to sleep happy, wake up happy, and aggravated all day long.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And you mentioned one of the other franchises that you have in your portfolio. How many franchises do you have for people to pick from? Like, say they want to get involved with a franchise. Like, what's that menu look like for you?
We have three different industries we focus on. One is pets and everything pet. Secondly is construction, led by our roofing company, and thirdly is the thing that I've been doing for 55 years is tax and accounting. So, and we have 8 different brands in those three initiatives.
Wow, wow, wow. And the other, so you mentioned the mobile grooming. I've seen not necessarily that particular brand running around, but I have seen mobile grooming trucks and people doing that. Um, did you start that? Like, come up with the idea, the company, the mission, all of that? Did you start that and then franchised it out, or how did that work?
No, actually, I haven't started any new industry. You
Okay.
know, I'm a copycat. I copied H&R Block and did it better. I copied some other groomers and did it better. We bought a firm with that was failing and had grown to about 20 or 25 franchises, and then was failing down to 2 different franchises um, 3.5 years ago, and then just grew it exponentially. We're growing incredibly quickly.
Okay. What did you, and obviously we don't dive into your industry secrets, we already know we're not getting all that. But what are some of the things that you did look at or did change in order to take that model, yet do it better and grow it?
Well, in we're focused in each of our brands at being number one in the industry, and to be number one, and we're focused on franchisee um, success, and for them to be successful, they have to have the best system. So many parts of our system are are the same throughout 8 of our brands. You know, Sam Walton said, and he wrote a great little book called paperback called Made in America, and he said, well, in you don't just look at your own industry to learn and improve. He said you look at all your customer experiences. So
Hmm.
when you're in an airplane, when you're in a hotel, when you're at a restaurant, when you're buying a car, you look at all your consumer experiences. So some of our secrets or our things that are objectively better than anyone else are we do in every brand, all eight companies. And I'll tell you one of them, one of the most important that, and people do say to me, Ryan, they say, "Oh, aren't you worried that your competitors are going to copy you?" I said, "My own franchisees don't listen to me, so I don't worry about my franchisees. I mean, my competitors." But one of the things we do is very simple and very successful, and your listeners can take it for themselves. And what we learned, and I learned it 30 years ago, is we call our customers 2 days after they were in. So 2 days after the dog was groomed, we call the customer. You know what? No one else is calling. I mean,
Mm,
you are bombarded every day by thousands of businesses that want your attention and want to show and prove themselves, but no one calls in any industry. And so we call the customer, and what we've learned is a couple of things. Number one is they like being called, so the retention rate goes up by 10%. Just by they like being called, and we just ask them, "How did we do?
yeah.
And what would you like to change? What can we do better?" And you get this very personable person, and the call isn't 5 minutes; it's probably not 3 minutes, right? And then what I've learned in especially my two biggest brands in taxes and in grooming, the people doing the work aren't good at asking for referrals.
Mm,
And so they're just, I mean, out of all the taxpayers I've had, not 10% of them are good at asking a referral. And not 10% of my groomers ask for referrals. No matter how much I try to incentivize them, convince them, beg them, they will not ask for a referral. And so I have this very personable person that calls you up and said, "Brian, how do we do for you?" And you say, "Wonderful, I loved it." "Well, do you know anyone else that might be interested in our service?" And so our referrals go up 30 to 50%. And it's just one simple thing that sets us apart. And we have in each of our brands, we have objective lists like that, and some of them are across all industries, and some are just peculiar or particular to that particular industry. And so, yeah, we have objectively the best system in the country, and I don't mean subjectively, because if you called the CEO of H&R Block and said, "Who offers the best tax service?" he would say H&R Block. If you call
right.
the CEO of Jackson Hewitt, "Who offers the best?" Jackson Hewitt. If you call my CEO, he can prove that we're the best because we call our customers, and we have 15 other things we do better than anyone else. They're objective things, not subjective.
That makes perfect sense. Well, there you go, guys. If you were wondering what you need to do in order to grow, in order to scale, just rewind this, for the last couple minutes, take notes, and right there was the masterclass of experience living that life and growing multiple businesses and franchises. John, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Where can people get into your world, learn more about you, your services, especially if they're thinking about jumping into the franchise world?
Yeah, it's John at JOHN at loyaltybrands.com. And if they like, they can get a free copy of my book about how I grew two companies worth $1.5 billion.
Perfect. Always dropping that value. That's what we strive to do here on GYET. And again, John, thank you so much for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. All right, guys, you know what to do. Like this show, share it out with your network. You never know whose life you can positively impact with just a simple and free share. So follow the show, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your audio podcasts, and peace. We will see you in the next one.